The starry blackness of space lit up as the Kelvari ships emerged from jump points near Jupiter. There were 12 of them at first, their hulls gleaming like polished silver in the distant sunlight. Their designs were sleek and perfect, without a single flaw or repair patch visible. In the command center of the Earth Defense Fleet headquarters on Luna Base, Admiral Frank Harmon watched the long-range scanner with a tight expression. He had hoped this day would never come. First contact with an alien species, and they arrived with warships. Send the greeting package on all frequencies, he ordered, and alert the fleet to maintain position, but do not, I repeat, do not show any aggressive moves. The EDF had only 47 ships total. Most were converted mining vessels, cargo haulers, and science ships with weapons bolted on wherever they would fit. The fleet had been cobbled together over the past decade after astronomers detected signals that suggested intelligent life in nearby star systems. On the bridge of the EDF Persistence, Captain Lisa Blackwood received the alert from Command. Her ship had once been a deep space mining vessel. Its hull was patched in dozens of places, and its new weapon systems stuck out at odd angles. But it was fast and had a strong power core, which made it one of the better ships in the makeshift fleet. Looks like the visitors are here, she said, to her crew. Battle stations, but keep weapons cold. Her executive officer, Commander Kyle Bennett, looked nervous. He had only been assigned to the Persistence 3 months ago. Do you think they're hostile? Lisa shrugged. Let's hope not. We're not exactly ready for a war. The next day, a smaller Kelvari vessel approached the human diplomatic ship stationed between Earth and Luna. Commander Alan Pierce led the human delegation. The aliens that emerged from their shuttle stood nearly 7 feet tall with bluish skin and 4 arms. Their leader introduced himself as High Marshal Zixtar of the Kelvari Dominion. We have observed your system for some time, the alien said, through a translation device. We wish to establish formal relations with your species. The meeting seemed to go well at first. The aliens were interested in Earth culture and history. But when Commander Pierce invited them to discuss trade and cooperative ventures, High Marshal Zixtar's mouthparts formed what humans would later learn was a smile of contempt. Your species is not ready for equal standing with the Dominion, he said. We have monitored your communications and observed your ships. Your technology is primitive. Your vessels are held together with what you call duct tape and prayers. Commander Pierce kept his face neutral. We may not have your advanced technology, but humanity has its strengths. 3 more Kelvari cruisers appeared near Saturn the next day. Then 7 more. Within a week, there were 32 alien warships in the solar system. Each one looked like it could destroy half the human fleet by itself. In her laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, engineer Olivia Martinez worked, without sleep. Her eyes were red, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Empty coffee cups littered her workstation. The simulations are showing success rates of nearly 70% now, her research partner Peter Grant said, looking at the data on his screen. It's not perfect, but it's not enough, Olivia cut him off. If this shield modulation technology is going to give our ships any chance at all, it needs to work at least 90% of the time. Peter rubbed his tired eyes. We don't have much time left. The president is meeting with the Kelvari again tomorrow. Then we work faster, Olivia said, adjusting the parameters of their experiment. The technology they were developing could potentially allow human ships to adapt their shields to the frequency of Kelvari weapons, making them temporarily resistant. It wasn't much, but it might buy them precious minutes in a fight. The breaking point came 3 weeks after first contact. Images of Earth's pathetic defense fleet began broadcasting across Kelvari networks as comedy. Captain Lisa Blackwood's Persistence was featured prominently, with alien commentators mocking its patches and retrofit weapons. Lisa watched the broadcast with her crew. Some looked angry, others embarrassed. She turned it off. They think we're a joke, said Lieutenant Ryan Parker, her tactical officer. Let them, Lisa replied. If they ever start shooting, they'll find out we're not laughing. That same day, High Marshal Zixtar delivered the Kelvari ultimatum to President Samantha Wells and the Earth Unified Government. The terms were simple. Earth would become a protected territory of the Kelvari Dominion. Humans would provide labor and resources in exchange for guidance from their new alien overlords. President Wells, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and a reputation for directness, didn't bother hiding her disgust. "Earth is not for sale or lease," she said. "We decline your offer." The High Marshal made the clicking sound that served as Kelvari laughter. It was not an offer, but a courtesy. "You have 48 Earth hours to prepare your people before we begin removing your leadership and military assets." He gestured to a subordinate who projected images of several major Earth cities. "We will start with these population centers." As soon as the Kelvari delegation left, President Wells called an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs in the underground command center beneath New Washington. General Chris Baker, a stocky man with a completely bald head, stood before the assembled leaders. "We knew this might happen. That's why we developed the Ragnarok Protocol." He brought up a holographic display of the solar system, showing the positions of all Kelvari and human ships. "They have us outgunned in every way, but they've made one critical mistake. They think we're weak and disorganized. We can use that." Admiral Harmon nodded. "The protocol calls for sacrificing some of our older vessels as decoys, while our newer ships use Engineer Martinez's shield technology and the Spectre system." President Wells looked troubled. "How many ships will we lose?" "Best case scenario, half our fleet," General Baker replied honestly. "Worst case, all of them, and Earth still falls. But we have to try." Back on the Persistence, Captain Blackwood received her orders. Her ship would lead the first wave, essentially a suicide mission to draw Kelvari forces into a trap. She didn't tell her crew immediately. Instead, she went to her quarters to record messages for her parents and brother. Commander Bennett found her there an hour later. He had accessed the mission briefing and realized what was happening. "You volunteered us for the first wave," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Why?" Lisa looked up at him. "Because the Persistence is fast enough to lead them where we want them to go, but old enough that its loss won't cripple the fleet." "That's not what I asked." She stood up, facing him. "Because someone has to, Kyle. And I'd rather it be someone who understands exactly what's at stake." They stared at each other in silence, years of history and unspoken feelings filling the space between them. "I'll inform the crew," Bennett finally said. "They deserve to know." As he turned to leave, Lisa called after him. "Tell them they can opt out. No one will think less of them." Bennett paused at the door. "No one's going to opt out, Captain. They're with you to the end." The crew of the Persistence took the news better than Captain Lisa Blackwood expected. There were no protests, no requests for transfer. Instead, they worked with renewed purpose, checking systems and making final repairs to their aging ship. Lieutenant Ryan Parker approached Lisa on the bridge. "Engineering reports the main drive is at 94% efficiency. That's the best they can do without a proper dock overhaul." Lisa nodded. "It will have to be enough." The plan was simple, but desperate. The human fleet would split into 3 groups. The first group, led by the Persistence, would appear to flee in panic when the Kelvari attacked. They would draw the alien cruisers into specific sectors where the second group waited in hiding. The third group, consisting of ships equipped with the experimental Spectre system, would target the Kelvari flagship once the aliens committed to the chase. 42 hours after the Kelvari ultimatum, High Marshal Zixtar sent a final message to Earth. His blue face filled the screens. In the command center, "Your time is up. Since you value your independence so highly, we will allow you to witness its end." The alien made a gesture with his upper right arm. "Our ships are moving into position. Resistance would be futile and wasteful." President Wells stood before the camera, her face showing no fear. "We understand. We have one request before you begin. Allow us to move our fleet away from Earth to avoid civilian casualties from debris." The alien commander made the clicking sound of Kelvari laughter. "Moving your scrap heap? Very well. It matters little where your ships are destroyed. As Soon as the transmission ended, General Baker turned to President Wells. That's it, they took the bait. In the underground laboratory, Olivia Martinez and her team loaded the shield modulation technology into a secure transmission system. Once active, it would allow them to remotely adjust the shields of all human ships in real time. Beside her, Dr. Jack Rodriguez was making final adjustments to the control system for the Spectre devices. The EMP burst has to be perfectly calibrated, he explained to Olivia. Too weak and it won't disable their systems. Too strong and it might damage our own ships if they're too close. Olivia checked her watch. 2 hours until the Kelvari expect our fleet to move. Is it ready? Jack nodded. As ready as it will ever be. On the Defiant, a converted cargo ship almost as large as a Kelvari cruiser, Captain Diane Foster briefed her crew. Her ship carried the largest of the Spectre devices and would need to get dangerously close to the Kelvari flagship. Once we activate the device, we'll have 30 seconds to move away before it detonates, she explained. The blast won't damage our hull, but it will fry our systems if we're too close. Her engineering chief, a burly man named Greg Holland, raised his hand. What if we can't move away in time? Diane didn't sugarcoat it. Then we'll be dead in space just like them. That's why I need those engines working perfectly. Back on the Persistence, Commander Bennett found Captain Blackwood in her ready room, studying the planned escape routes on a tablet. The crew is ready, he reported. But I have a suggestion. Lisa looked up. Go on. The Kelvari will expect us to run straight away from them. What if we do something unexpected? Maybe fly toward one of their flanking vessels before turning away? Lisa considered it. That might work. It would confuse them. Maybe even make them think we're attempting some kind of suicide attack. She pulled up the tactical display. If we approach this cruiser here, then suddenly turn towards Sector 7, it could draw more of them after us. Bennett nodded. Exactly. And the more ships we can lure into the trap, the better our chances. Lisa studied his face. They had served together years ago on another ship, before disagreements and politics pulled them apart. Having him as her XO these past months had been challenging, but his tactical thinking was still as sharp as ever. Good idea, she said finally. Make the adjustments to our course, and Kyle? She hesitated. If things go wrong, get as many of the crew off as possible. He stared at her. We all knew what we signed up for, Captain. The moment of truth came sooner than expected. 8 hours before the deadline, the Kelvari ships began moving into attack formation. They're not waiting, Admiral Harmon announced to the Earth Defense Council. All ships initiate Ragnarok protocol now. Across the solar system, human vessels began moving. Some appeared to flee in panic, while others powered down to hide among debris fields and asteroid clusters. On the Persistence, Lisa gave the order. All ahead full. Take us on the approach vector to Kelvari Cruiser 4, then be ready to make a hard turn toward Sector 7 on my mark. The ship's engines roared to life, pushing it forward at increasing speed. On the tactical display, 3 Kelvari cruisers immediately changed course to intercept them. They've taken the bait, Bennett reported. The Kelvari communications channels, which human intelligence had managed to tap into, filled with chatter. The humans are running exactly as expected, one Kelvari commander reported. Their largest vessels appear to be fleeing toward the outer system. High Marshal Zixtar's voice responded, Do not let them escape. I want their leaders to watch as we destroy their precious fleet before we begin the planetary assault. As the Persistence approached Kelvari Cruiser 4, the alien vessel fired a warning shot that passed just above their hull. Now, Lisa ordered. The helmsman executed a hard turn that strained the old ship's structural integrity. Alarms blared as they accelerated toward Sector 7. They're following, Bennett confirmed, watching the tactical display. All 3 cruisers plus 2 more joining the pursuit. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. 5 ships, better than we hoped for. Across the battlefield, other human vessels were executing similar maneuvers. Captain Foster's Defiant appeared, to suffer a power failure, drifting helplessly toward the center of the Kelvari formation. The aliens ignored it, focusing on capturing the fleeing ships. In the underground command center, Olivia Martinez activated the shield modulation system. All ships receiving adaptive shield updates, she reported. First wave is protected as much as possible. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the Spectre devices. Defiant is in position. Captain Foster reports all systems ready. President Wells, watching from a secondary command post in a hardened bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, took a deep breath. This is it. The fate of humanity depends on what happens in the next hour. General Baker nodded grimly. May God help us all. The Persistence shuddered as Kelvari energy weapons grazed its hull. Emergency lights flashed on the bridge as Captain Lisa Blackwood gripped her command chair. Shields holding at 63%, Lieutenant Parker reported. The modulation technology is working. Lisa nodded grimly. Keep us on course for Sector 7. We need to get all 5 of those cruisers to follow us into the trap. The ship vibrated again as another blast hit them. This time a section of the outer hull tore away, spinning off into space. Deck 4, sections 12 through 15 are depressurizing, Commander Bennett called out. Emergency bulkheads activated. Lisa, check the tactical display. The 5 Kelvari cruisers were spread out behind them, gaining steadily. She opened a channel to engineering. How much more can you give me on the main drive? Chief Engineer Susan Miller's voice came back strained. The coolant system is failing. I can give you full power for maybe 3 more minutes before we risk a core breach. 3 minutes is all we need, Lisa replied. She turned to Bennett. Status of the other ships? He checked his console. Group 1 is drawing their targets to positions. The Defiant is still drifting toward the Kelvari flagship. Group 3 is in position and waiting. On the Defiant, Captain Diane Foster and her crew maintained their act of a ship in distress. Their vessel tumbled slowly, emergency lights blinking as it drifted closer to the massive Kelvari flagship. They're scanning us, reported her sensor officer, a young woman named Amber Dixon. Diane nodded. Let them look. All they'll see is a crippled ship with failing life support. They had shut down all non-essential systems and rigged the sensors to show false readings of dropping oxygen levels and power failures. The Spectre device, hidden in what was once a cargo hold, remained inactive but ready. 2 minutes until we're in optimal range, Greg Holland reported from engineering. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Olivia Martinez and her team worked frantically. The shield modulation system was performing well, but the Kelvari were already adapting their weapons. They're shifting to a higher energy frequency, Olivia noted as data streamed across her screens. Uploading new shield parameters to all Group 1 vessels now. Beside her, Dr. Rodriguez monitored the status of the Spectre devices. Defiant reports ready to activate on command. The other Spectre-equipped ships are moving into position. General Baker studied the tactical display showing all human and Kelvari ships. The Kelvari are taking the bait. They're spreading their forces thin, chasing our fleeing ships. On the Kelvari flagship, High Marshal Zixtar watched with amusement as the human fleet scattered. Just as expected, he said to his second-in-command. Their ships are breaking formation and running. Target their engines but leave the vessels intact. We can salvage their resources later. His subordinate pointed to a drifting human ship, the Defiant, that was slowly tumbling toward them. What about that one? It appears to be disabled. Zixtar made a dismissive gesture with his lower arms. Ignore it. Focus on the one still fighting. That one is already finished. The Persistence reached Sector 7 with the 5 Kelvari cruisers still in pursuit. The old mining ship's engines were overheating, leaving a trail of plasma behind them. We're here, Commander Bennett announced. All enemy ships are still following. Lisa took a deep breath. Helm, execute maneuver Phoenix. The helmsman punched in the commands. The Persistence suddenly cut its main engines and fired all maneuvering thrusters, spinning the ship 180 degrees to face the pursuing Kelvari cruisers. At the same moment, 8 human vessels that had been hiding among the debris in Sector 7 powered up their systems. The Kelvari cruisers, surprised by this sudden change, tried to slow their approach. But they had been moving too fast, too confident, in their pursuit. All weapons fire, Lisa ordered. The Persistence's hidden weapon systems activated. What the Kelvari had thought were mining laser mounts were actually high-powered energy cannons. What looked like ore processing extensions were missile launchers. The ship unleashed a barrage that struck the lead Kelvari cruiser directly on its forward sensors. Simultaneously, the 8 hidden human ships opened fire from multiple angles. 2 of them revealed massive railguns, magnetic accelerators that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic energy alone was enough to pierce the unprepared Kelvari shields. In the underground command center, Olivia Martinez saw the battle unfolding on her screens. Sector 7 engagement has begun, she reported. Sector 3 and Sector 5 groups also engaging. Dr. Rodriguez checked his data. The Defiant is in position. They're ready. General Baker gave the order. Tell Captain Foster to activate Spectre. The Defiant, Diane received the command. Spectre activation authorized, she told her crew. Start the countdown and prepare for emergency thrust. Greg Holland began the sequence. Spectre powering up, 30 seconds to discharge. The Defiant was now less than 5 kilometers from the Kelvari flagship, well within the Spectre's effective range. The device drew power from the ship's main reactor, building to critical levels. 20 seconds. Greg counted down. Diane opened, a channel to all stations. All hands brace for thrust on my mark. As soon as Spectre discharges, we're getting out of here at maximum speed. 10 seconds. On the Kelvari flagship, an officer finally noticed something unusual about the drifting human vessel. Hi, Marshal. I'm detecting a massive power buildup in that disabled ship. Zixtar turned his attention to the Defiant just as alarms began blaring across his bridge. Evasive action, he ordered, but it was too late. 5 seconds, Greg announced on the Defiant. 4, 3, 2, 1. Spectre discharge. The device activated, sending out an electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to the frequency of Kelvari technology. The wave was invisible but devastating. It washed over the flagship and 4 nearby cruisers. Instantly, the Kelvari ships went dark. Their engines died, their weapons powered down, and their shields collapsed. Now, Diane ordered. The Defiant's engines roared to life, pushing the ship away from the disabled Kelvari vessels. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out. Human ships that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly turned to fight. Hidden vessels emerged from concealment. The Kelvari, who had spread their forces thin to chase what they thought were easy targets, found themselves isolated and under attack from multiple directions. In Sector 7, Lisa watched as her trap closed around the 5 Kelvari cruisers. 2 were already heavily damaged, their sleek hulls now marred with impact craters and burning breaches. Continue firing, she ordered. Don't give them time to regroup. Commander Bennett studied the tactical display. The Ragnarok protocol is working, Captain. Reports coming in from all sectors. The Kelvari are taking heavy losses. For the first time since the battle began, Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Let's make sure High Marshal Zixtar regrets laughing at our scrap ships. High Marshal Zixtar stumbled as his flagship's emergency lighting flickered on. The bridge was in chaos. None of the main systems were responding. Officers scrambled to restart essential equipment while damage reports flooded in through backup communication devices. What happened? He demanded. His second-in-command checked a portable scanner. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse specifically tuned to our technology. Most systems are completely fried. Zixtar moved to a viewport and looked out at the battle. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human ships were not retreating anymore. Instead, they were attacking with unexpected ferocity. Even worse, many of the fleeing vessels had suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems that were far more advanced than anything the Kelvari had detected during their surveillance. We've been tricked, he realized with growing horror. Send emergency signals to all cruisers. Order them to regroup and provide support. Communications are down, his officer replied. We can only use short-range emergency transmitters. Across the solar system, the tide of battle had turned dramatically. In Sector 7, Captain Lisa Blackwood's trap had caught 5 Kelvari cruisers. 2 were already dead in space, their sleek hulls cracked open by the Persistence's mining equipment that had been converted into powerful mass drivers. Target the engines on Cruiser 3, Lisa ordered. Her ship shuddered as it took another hit, but the adaptive shields were holding, barely. Commander Bennett monitored the tactical situation. The other two cruisers are trying to escape the sector. Don't let them, Lisa said. Have the Sullivan and the Dauntless cut them off. The two human ships, which had been hiding among the debris, moved to block the escaping Kelvari vessels. Unlike the Persistence, these ships had been science vessels before their conversion. Their sensor arrays had been repurposed into targeting systems of incredible precision. In the underground command center, Olivia Martinez worked frantically to keep the shield modulation technology functioning. The Kelvari were adapting their weapons frequencies faster than expected. Sector 3 reports heavy casualties, she told General Baker. 2 of our ships destroyed, 1 badly damaged. Dr. Rodriguez checked his own screens. The Spectre effect is wearing off. The disabled Kelvari ships are beginning to restore power. President Wells, watching from her secure bunker, asked the question on everyone's mind. How are we doing overall? General, Baker studied the tactical display. Better than expected. We've destroyed or disabled 8 Kelvari cruisers so far. Another 12 are engaged and taking damage. But we've lost 7 of our own ships, with 5 more heavily damaged. And the Kelvari flagship? The President asked. Still disabled from the Spectre pulse, but they're working to restore systems. We need to press our advantage while we can. Back in Sector 7, the battle had reached a critical point. 3 Kelvari cruisers were now destroyed or disabled, but the Persistence had taken heavy damage. Part of the bridge was exposed to space, sealed off by emergency force fields. Fires raged on 2 decks, and the main power core was operating at dangerous levels. Hull breach on Deck 2, Lieutenant Parker reported. Casualties reported in engineering. Lisa checked the damage control screen. Reroute emergency teams. We need to keep the core stable. Commander Bennett looked up from his console. Captain, sensors show more Kelvari ships approaching from Sector 9. They must have broken off from another engagement. Lisa made a quick decision. We've done what we came to do. Signal the other ships. We're withdrawing to the secondary position. As the Persistence and its companion ships began moving away from the disabled Kelvari cruisers, the aliens launched a desperate counterattack. Energy beams lanced out, catching one of the human vessels, the Sullivan, directly amidships. The science ship broke apart, its reactor going critical in a blinding flash. Sullivan is gone, Bennett reported grimly. No sign of survivors. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. The Sullivan had carried a crew of 34. Friends and colleagues now gone. She pushed the grief aside. Continue withdrawal. All power to aft shields. On the Defiant. Captain Diane Foster and her crew had successfully escaped the blast radius of their Spectre device. The converted cargo ship was now joining with other human vessels to engage Kelvari cruisers that had been drawn to Sector 4. The Yei flagship is beginning to restore power. Amber Dixon reported from her sensor station. Estimated time to weapons capability, 15 minutes. Diane nodded. That gives us time to deal with these 3 cruisers first. The Defiant's true nature was now fully revealed. What had appeared to be cargo loading equipment had transformed into multiple weapon platforms. The ship's cavernous holds contained not goods but advanced missile systems that had been developed in secret. Fire solution ready for Cruiser 9, Greg Holland called from Tactical. Fire, Diane ordered. A swarm of missiles erupted from the Defiant's launch tubes, streaking toward the Kelvari vessel. The alien ship tried to evade, but the missiles adjusted their course, following the target relentlessly. Half of them were intercepted by the cruiser's point defense systems, but the rest found their mark, tearing into the ship's hull. In the command center, Olivia Martinez received a troubling report from one of her technicians. The shield modulation system is losing effectiveness, she told General Baker. The Kelvari are adapting faster than we can update. Baker frowned. How long can you keep it working? Maybe 20 more minutes at current adjustment rates. That's not enough time. Baker turned to Dr. Rodriguez. What about the other Spectre devices? 3 have been deployed successfully. 2 more are in position but facing heavy resistance. Baker made a decision. Order all remaining Spectre-equipped ships to deploy immediately, even if they're not in optimal position. We need to finish this before the Kelvari can regroup. The order went out to all sectors. The human ships carrying the remaining Spectre devices moved toward their targets, braving intense fire to get within range. On the Persistence, Lisa received the new orders as her ship limped toward the secondary position. General Baker is ordering all remaining Spectre devices to activate, she told Bennett. He's going for a knockout blow. Bennett checked their status. Our engines are failing. We won't make it to the secondary position at this rate. Lisa studied the tactical display. Her ship was badly damaged, but they were still in the fight. A Kelvari cruiser was approaching from their starboard side, weapons charging. Change of plans, she decided. Helm, set course to intercept that cruiser. All remaining power to weapons. The crew looked at her in surprise, but no one questioned the order. The Persistence's engines flared as it turned toward the approaching enemy. The mining ship might be held together with patches and prayers, but it still had one advantage: its converted mass driver, originally designed to break up asteroids. Charge the main driver, Lisa ordered. Target their command section. The battered human ship moved to face the gleaming Kelvari cruiser. Despite everything, despite the damage and the odds, the Persistence was still fighting. And it wasn't alone. Across the solar system, dozens of human scrap ships were proving that appearances could be deceiving. High Marshal Zixtar, watching from his partially restored bridge, finally understood the truth. The humans hadn't been desperate or disorganized. Every move had been carefully planned, every retreat a trap, every seeming weakness a disguised strength. We've made a terrible mistake, he whispered. The Persistence shook violently as its mass driver fired at the approaching Kelvari cruiser. The weapon, once used to break apart asteroids for mining, sent a solid projectile hurtling through space at incredible speed. It struck the alien ship, directly in its command section, punching through shields weakened by the adaptive modulation technology. Direct hit, Lieutenant Parker reported, his voice barely audible over the alarms blaring throughout the ship. Their forward section is breached. Captain Lisa Blackwood gripped her command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Status of their weapons? Still active, Commander Bennett replied. They're turning to bring their main batteries to bear on us. Lisa made a quick decision. Divert all remaining power to the mass driver. Prepare for one final shot. Chief Engineer, Susan Miller's voice came over the comm, strained and urgent. Captain, the core containment is failing. If we push any more power to weapons, we risk a breach. Understood, Lisa replied. How long do we have? 10 minutes, maybe less. Lisa exchanged a look with Bennett. They both knew what that meant. Charge the driver, target their power core. The damaged Persistence turned to face the Kelvari cruiser head-on. Its hull was scarred and breached in multiple places, held together by emergency fields and the sheer determination of its crew. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out as human vessels pressed their advantage. The remaining Spectre devices had been activated, disabling more Kelvari ships. The battle had turned into a chaotic melee, with both sides taking heavy losses. In the underground command center, General Baker received reports from all sectors. 19 Kelvari cruisers confirmed destroyed or disabled, a communications officer announced. 8 more heavily damaged. 5 still fully operational but withdrawing to defensive positions. President Wells looked at the casualty reports. For the human fleet, 23 ships lost with their crews. Another 15 so badly damaged they might never fly again. The cost had been terrible, but they were winning. What about the Kelvari flagship? She asked. Still partially disabled from the first Spectre pulse, General Baker replied. They've restored some systems but remain vulnerable. Dr. Rodriguez studied his screens. The Defiant is moving to engage the flagship with conventional weapons. Captain Foster reports their Spectre device was their only one. On the Defiant, Captain Diane Foster prepared her crew for what might be their toughest fight yet. The Kelvari flagship was massive, dwarfing her converted cargo ship. Even with its systems partially disabled, it remained dangerous. All weapons. Stations report ready, Greg Holland informed her. Missile tubes loaded and targeting systems active. Diane nodded. Take us in. Focus fire on any section showing power signatures. As the Defiant approached, the flagship managed to bring some of its point defense systems online. Energy beams lashed out, scoring hits along the human ship's hull. Shields holding at 40%, Amber Dixon reported from her station. They're recovering faster than expected. The battle between the two ships intensified as they drew closer. Defiant launched waves of missiles, while the flagship responded with increasing firepower as more of its systems came back online. In Sector 7, the Persistence faced its own desperate situation. The mass driver had charged for its final shot, drawing critical power from life support and containment systems. Driver at full charge, Parker announced. Target locked. Lisa looked around at her bridge crew. Despite the damage, despite knowing what was about to happen, they remained at their posts, determined to see this through. Fire, she ordered quietly. The mass driver discharged with a sound that shook the entire ship. The projectile streaked across space and struck the Kelvari cruiser's power core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien ship erupted in a series of explosions that tore it apart from the inside. At the same moment, warning lights flashed red across the Persistence's bridge. Core containment failing, Bennett reported. We have 3 minutes until breach. Lisa opened a ship-wide channel. All hands abandon ship. Proceed to escape pods immediately. She paused, then added, It's been an honor serving with you all. As the crew rushed to evacuate, Lisa and Bennett remained on the bridge, ensuring everyone else got out. You should go, Lisa told him as they worked to reroute power to the escape pod systems. Bennett shook his head. Not without you, Captain. On the Kelvari flagship, High Marshal Zixtar watched in disbelief as the battle turned against his forces. The elegant, powerful cruisers that had been the pride of the Dominion were being destroyed by ships he had mocked as junk. 19 cruisers lost, his second-in-command reported. We've never suffered such casualties in a single engagement. Zixtar made a decision. Signal all remaining ships. Cease fire and pull back to defensive positions. But it was too late for such orders. The Defiant had closed to point-blank range with the flagship, its weapons tearing into the larger vessel's hull. Other human ships had joined the attack, surrounding the Kelvari command ship. We have no choice, Zixtar said finally. Send the surrender signal. The battle didn't end immediately. Some Kelvari ships continued fighting, either not receiving the surrender order or choosing to ignore it. But gradually, sector by sector, the firing stopped. In the command center, General Baker received the news with cautious optimism. The Kelvari flagship is broadcasting a surrender signal on all frequencies. President Wells exhaled slowly. Verify it, then order our ships to cease fire but maintain combat readiness. The final tally was astonishing. Of the 32 Kelvari cruisers that had entered the solar system, 29 were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 3, including the flagship, were surrounded by human vessels. The cost for humanity had been high. 26 ships lost, with over 800 crew members. Every surviving vessel had sustained damage, some critically. 1 week later, President Wells stood in the briefing room of Luna Base. Before her stood the captains and key personnel who had led the defense of Earth. Captain Diane Foster, of the Defiant. Engineer Olivia Martinez and Dr. Jack Rodriguez, whose technologies had made victory possible. And, surprising many who had thought her lost with her ship, Captain Lisa Blackwood of the Persistence, rescued at the last moment from her dying vessel. Today, we honor your courage and sacrifice, President Wells said. The Kelvari Dominion has agreed to withdraw from our system and recognize Earth's independence. High Marshal Zixtar himself has acknowledged that they severely underestimated humanity. She gestured to a view screen showing the remains of the Persistence being towed to Earth orbit. This ship, like many others, will be preserved as a memorial, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the strength of humanity lies not in the perfection of our technology, but in our ingenuity, our determination, and our willingness to fight for our freedom. Lisa Blackwood looked at the image of her broken ship. Despite everything, she felt a surge of pride. The Persistence had lived up to its name. "What happens now?" she asked. President Wells turned to face her. "Now, Captain Blackwood, we rebuild, and we prepare. The galaxy now knows we exist, and that we're not to be underestimated." She smiled. "I believe you've been offered command of our first true battleship. The EDF vindication is nearly complete." Lisa glanced at Bennett, who stood at her side. "Yes, Madam President, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." As they left the briefing room, Lisa and her fellow officers looked out the viewport at Earth shining blue and green below them. They had protected their home against impossible odds. And though the cost had been high, humanity had earned its place among the stars. No one would laugh at human ships ever again.